Welcome to all Caribbean entrepreneurs. If you've been ready and waiting to take your business digital and get paid online while you sip something strong on the beach, this podcast is for you. We'll hear from the Caribbean's finest entrepreneurs on topics like e-commerce, business development, brand building, social media, their wins and failures. This is the only place in the region helping you navigate the digital age from the Caribbean's perspective. This is Digipreneur FM. And now, let's give it up for the Digiboss himself, Mr. Karan Rose.
Yo! Thank you to everybody tuning in to another episode of the Digipreneur FM podcast. And as usual, it is your boy, Mr. Rose. DJ, you gotta fade us all the way out. Please and thank you, because we gotta talk to the people. Now, it is March 24th, Sunday, March 24th, 2024. And this is episode number 156. Usually I make sure before I even say it, and I've just been scrambling to pull up my numbers. Yeah, my episode number 156, I was right. Just to confirm, you know. How are you lovely people doing today? How are you lovely people in the Digipreneur family doing today? First things first, I want to give a big shout out to the people who have been following Digipreneur. If this is your, if this is your fifth or more episode, thank you for all the support. If this is your very first episode taking in the Digipreneur FM podcast, thank you for tuning in. And I hope that this will not be your last. Going through the countries that have tuned in to the podcast this month, I want to give them a quick shout out. I realize I always like to watch the countries because, the fact that we have such a diverse group of listeners from all over the world is always amazing to me, even though the content is predominantly for Caribbean businesses and Caribbean entrepreneurs and in the diaspora. People listen from all over the world, and they take whatever they take. They take that perspective from what's happening in the Caribbean, and they go about it, implement whatever they can in their own way. Let me give a shout out to the countries that have been tuned in, right? And this is everybody who's been listening to the podcast this month. So we got, first up, Trinidad and Tobago. Shout outs to the home team giving me all the support. Then we got the U.S., Barbados, Bahamas, Jamaica, St. Lucia, Canada, Grenada, St. Vincent and the Grenadines, Ireland. What up, Ireland? St. Kitts and Nevis, Montserrat, Dominica. We have Singapore. You know what the funny thing is with Singapore? The minute I told one of my friends that, Singapore is on the list, I've written it down, so it's gonna happen. All of a sudden, I'm getting listeners from Singapore. Shout outs to Singapore. Then we got India, Peru, next destination that I've written down that I gotta go to. And I've also told people, man, when I was in Colombia, two of the five best spots that I ate at were Peruvian spots. So I definitely gotta go and check out Peru and get some of that food. Then we got Antigua and Barbuda, United Kingdom, UK, what up? France, Anguilla, Brazil, Japan, Cayman Islands, Mexico, Netherlands, Russia, Turks and Caicos, British Virgin Islands, and listen, folks, we got Yemen in the building. Shout outs to the people who are listening in from Yemen. Wow. So you create all this content, and when you start to watch, and this is one of the reasons why I love podcasts, when you create your content and you look to see, where in the world people are tuning in from, it's a very, very diverse mix of listeners. So shout outs to everybody from all the countries. I used to have a massive, massive listenership from Argentina. And where was the other one? The other one, I believe, was Argentina and Chile. I need y'all back. I haven't seen my Argentinian fans and Chilean people in a little while. I need to get y'all back. I need to rope y'all back in. And you know what? I'm going to give you guys another interesting stat as well, right? There's a lot of you who are probably thinking about starting a podcast. Let me show you. Let me just read out where people, like all of the places that people listen to the podcast from, right? So then I just give you an idea as to, where you need to ensure your podcast is being distributed to, right? So here's a list of all the places where people listen to the podcast from. So number one is Google Chrome. So you guys know that I have the podcast website. So the largest amount of people listen to the podcast from the website. That's always cool. Second up is Apple Podcasts, right? Apple Podcasts is the biggest podcast platform in the world. A huge amount of the traffic comes in from Apple Podcasts every month. So once I see Google Chrome and Apple Podcasts at the top, I'm always happy because Google Chrome means that me publishing the content, doing good SEO work, creating the right topics that people are searching for, that when they do find it through a Google search or whatnot, they're searching, they're clicking, they're listening in, right? That's how I know the website's doing what it has to do. Whenever I see Google Chrome always at the top, or it's Google Chrome is usually it's usually second, but this month it's first, and Apple Podcasts is usually always predominantly the number one traffic, the number one distribution channel that brings in the most traffic for me. All right. So Google Chrome right now is in the lead. Then it's Apple Podcasts. Then it's Google Podcasts. Then it's Spotify. Then it's Microsoft Edge. Again, people listen to the podcast from the website, but using Microsoft Edge. Then we have Podbean, Pocket Cast, then Safari, same thing like Chrome and Edge. Then we have Apple Mail, funny. Then we got LinkedIn, we got Facebook, we got Firefox, Podcast Republic, which is a podcasting app, then Castbox, then Beyond Pod, iTunes, Overcast, Player FM, Chromecast, people watching or listening to the podcast from their TVs, which is always dope. Then we have Podcast Addict. Yeah, those are the top sources. So again, I'm just saying that out loud so that you guys understand, if you guys are doing a podcast, where you guys want to ensure that you're distributing your podcast, because you want to get traffic from everywhere, right? And you know what? I'm going to write that down because that has been on my mind to talk to everybody about. The game of traffic, right? That's what I call it, the game of traffic. Trying to get traffic from every which way possible, right? And that's significant because most businesses right now are only trying to get traffic to their business from one or two social media platforms, right? Now, if you've managed to build a community on IG, or you've managed to build a community on TikTok or Facebook, that's good. But you can get traffic from, a lot of places, right? And because businesses only ever really try to get it from social media and then one or two places, like, you're limiting your reach, and you don't even know how much you're limiting your reach, and you're just not tapping into where your audiences are, right? You have an audience everywhere. And again, I'll dive into this in an actual dedicated episode, but you have an audience everywhere. And this is one of the reasons why I will tell people, you gotta listen to Gary Vee. Like, you absolutely need to understand the Gary Vee philosophy. And also there's another author called Russell Brunson. He's another guy that dives in deep on traffic. That you guys can kind of check out. But Gary Vee will always say that you have an audience everywhere, and it's your job to get creative enough to be able to tap into those platforms, those different sources, and come up with some creative ways to extract the audience out of those platforms. You have an audience everywhere. Your audience is not just hanging out on Facebook. They're not just hanging out on TikTok or on Instagram. And that is where a lot of, I think, social media people right now who are just, very loud, I think that's the message that, they keep on trying to push out to people that, hey, your audience is on social media. You need to pick one or two social media platforms and hone in on that and build your audience. Okay. Like that might be a good starting point, right? It might be a good starting point. Because I wouldn't tell anybody to do everything all at once, even though there are ways to do it. But it's a good starting point. But it gets to a point where you need to be building upon the success that you're having on that one platform. And that doesn't mean go out and jump on every single social media platform. Stop just thinking social media, right? There's so many ways. There's so many platforms. Your audiences are in so many different places. And it's your job to get creative enough to figure out how to tap into those audiences. And if you do that and you start to play in the game of traffic where now you're getting traffic from all of these various sources, your content, your business, your digital presence are all going to benefit from that, right? So for the podcast, I'm not just uploading the podcast to Podbean and, hoping Podbean just does a thing. No, we have the websites. So we're uploading to Podbean. It's being distributed to multiple podcast platforms like Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts. But then having the website allows me now to do other things to drive traffic to the platform. So whenever I see Google Chrome at the top, because Google Chrome is the number one most used web browser, right? I know that our other strategies are working very well, right? But again, I'll get into a dedicated episode on what I call the game of traffic. But that kind of that's a good segue into the conversation today, which is the title of this episode is called The Breakdown of My Brand Ecosystem. Now, I wrote this out as a blog, so I'm going to be using the blog as a foundation for this episode today. But I wrote this down as a blog for two reasons. One, the game of traffic. We want to ensure that we pull in traffic from everywhere, right? We don't just want to just do one thing, right? But then also, at least you're going to have a write-up that you can consume, you can bookmark, and you can refer back to easily, all right? But the podcast, now that we're talking about it, it allows me now to, one, talk to the Digipreneur family who enjoy listening to the podcast, but then also I get to add some more additional insights that's not written down, right? So let's dive right into it. So the first things first, what is a brand ecosystem? Now, a brand ecosystem is a dynamic, self-sustaining network composed of various offerings, ranging from things like coaching to the software you've created, to courses you've created, live events that you do, to books, to training, services and products that a business or an individual provides. This ecosystem is tailored to harness the unique strengths of its creator and to address the evolving needs and desires of the community and customers they serve. It stands out for its adaptability and uniqueness, constantly evolving to remain relevant and responsive in a changing market. The central concept, the main concept of the brand ecosystem is the strategic diversification of your income streams, ensuring that you are financially resilient and you are sustainable by not relying on one single source of revenue. This approach not only creates financial stability, but it also enriches the value offered to the audience, making the ecosystem a powerful tool for future-proofing your business, especially in the digital age that we live in. So at its core, the brand ecosystem is going to thrive on innovation, engagement, and the deep value-oriented delivery of your expertise. Now, why is this bad boy important? It's important because building your brand ecosystem is one of the most important things you could do for your business today. So we're going to use me as an example because I could speak on myself and what I do, and I can show you guys my brand ecosystem so you guys have something to reference in the real world, right? So for me, I wear multiple hats. So I'm a digital strategist. That's my main thing that I do. I'm an international speaker at this point. Kind of sounds funny and weird saying that, but you know what? We're owning it because it's very true. We're an international speaker. We are a podcaster. We are a radio host. I'm a news columnist. I'm also a TV personality. I'm a program advisor at the University of South Florida. I am a workshop facilitator. I am a workshop facilitator at UE Lockjack. And my professional journey embodies the essence of a comprehensive brand ecosystem that's tailored for the digital age. So what do? My mission really is to empower Caribbean business owners and those in the diaspora with the strategies that pave the way for success in an increasingly digital marketplace. My goal has always been to teach you to build your digital presence and monetize your platforms and tap into the global economy, right? So what makes up this brand ecosystem? What are the components that make up the ecosystem? For me, there are three components, right? There are three categories, and then each category has various components that make up that section. So the brand ecosystem components for me is: one is your free content, two is your service and products, because this is how you're going to be generating your money, and then three is also going to be the events that you do, right? So these are the core components that make up my ecosystem, and you're going to notice, and I want you to pay attention to see how they all work together. They all feed into each other. They all fuel each other, right? So let's start with the free content. So what do I do for free content that gets the word out about me, that showcases my expertise? What do? So my free content consists of blogs, podcasts, YouTube channel, all of my social media platforms, the column that I write for Jamaica Observer and Trinidad and Tobago Newsday, the radio show that I have, and also being on TV, right? All of these platforms allow me to create free content where people can learn about me, but also be taught about everything that I deliver on within the digital space, within digital marketing, within e-commerce, within just digital skill sets. All the things that I talk about, I use the free content to educate people, but also to show the depth of my knowledge, so that people can listen to me, take me in, and they can qualify or self-disqualify themselves. People are going to listen to me and say, this is the guy who can definitely address our problems, or they'll self-disqualify and say, yeah, this guy is a quack, he is not for us, and they keep it moving. And what that does is it allows me to get a higher quality of people that do finally reach out to me. They've already done sold themselves, right? So a pivotal element of my brand ecosystem is the free content that I provide, right? And the philosophy is that visibility is a prerequisite to profitability. say that again. Visibility is a prerequisite to profitability. People need to know about you in order to do business with you, right? So leveraging my experiences from my first business, Droid Island, which was a smartphone business, honestly, every single day I wake up, I feel the itch to bring that back. Like I want to have a product business again. Yeah, I really might. Let's see. Anyways, so my digital content will span across. It spans across several content pillars to solve problems. So I create content around digital marketing, data and analytics, digital payments, e-commerce, and digital skills. Right, and these are key areas that I've had to master in my own smartphone business in order to thrive. Acknowledging the diverse learning preferences among my audience, I've dedicated to producing content in a variety of formats. So all of my content is going to fit the learning styles that people have. And the three learning styles that people have are visual content, or they learn visually, they learn through audio, and they learn through written, right? And I firmly believe that if you need to build a strong, robust digital presence, you need to be hitting the trifecta of the learning styles. You need to have visual content, which could be video, infographics, that type of thing. You need to have audio content because, again, there are going to be people that want to listen via audio and internalize what you're saying. And then you're going to have written content. People learn from reading as well, right? People listen to audiobooks. People listen to the radio. People they read books, they read articles, they read, and then they watch videos, they watch infographics, all that stuff, right? So you need to hit the trifecta. And if you hit the trifecta, then when you're distributing the content, you're going to realize, oh, wow, there's a lot of places to distribute video content, audio content, and written content that don't involve social media. So when you learn how to do those things and you learn the different platforms to distribute the content, again, you're just going to be spreading your reach. Now, let me break down how each of those channels work for me. So the blog allows my content to be searchable through the search engines. It's also the number one traffic driver to websites, right? So when you're creating content when you have a website, most people that do end up having a website, especially in the Caribbean, don't create content on their website, and it's just a static website. It's their homepage, the about page. They might showcase some of the media that they've been featured in, some pictures. Maybe they have some products on their website, and then that contact page. But it's very static. So even though they might be selling products, the website's not really being updated much. And it's static, and the search engines downrank static websites, right? And what's the most critical way to not get your website downranked or not allow it to get that static designation? That's through creating content on your website. Things like your blogs, adding your podcast episodes as posts on your website. Your YouTube videos, your videos in general, embedding those things on your website in your post sections, so you're constantly creating content on your website. That's a great way to start building traffic to your website, right? So my content on my website is the number one way that drives traffic to my website. But then it also allows people to come to the website and then subscribe to the email list for more content. They can also subscribe to the push notification list to be updated on any new content, words of wisdom, workshops, promos, that type of thing. We have that healthy push notification list. But then also people can, you also have your CRM that's integrated into your website if you're smart. And your CRM is going to give you a whole lot of power and functionality for your business. It's going to manage the relationship with your customers, give you some extremely good data and insights, and it just does a whole lot of things, right? But that's connected to your website. So the blogs drive traffic to the website. I write for the Jamaica Observer and the Trinidad and Tobago Newsday media houses. So writing content for them allows me to create a massive presence offline. and get my name and content into the hands of people who prefer to read the newspapers. So just when you think, and this is what, a lot of people think this, I'm sure most people probably think this, nobody buys newspapers anymore, and they put their own bias on it. You might not buy papers anymore, but trust and believe people are still buying papers, right? And it's a lot of the people who are on the ground. It's a lot of the people who are in C-suite. You go into a lot of business places. There's always a fresh newspaper right there for people to pick up, and they pick it up, board, and read it in waiting rooms, right? So people are still buying the papers. People still have subscription to papers. They're not buying it as much as they were simply because there's just more media platforms out there. There's more channels out there to consume that content. For example, they load the content to their website so people can read the content on their website. They then take the links and they post it across social media. People see the content on social media, click on it from them, and read the content from social media. Apple News is the number one news platform in the world, and the only way for your content to show up in Apple News is they index content only from a media house. Same thing with Google News as well. So if you want to show up on the two biggest news platforms who have millions and millions and millions and millions of people who use Apple News around the world and use Google News around the world, writing for a media house is the only way to get into that, right? So it also gets me into households and into hands offline, and it also has massive, massive digital benefits as well, right? And again, has nothing to do with social media, right? So that's the key reasons why I write for the media houses. Then I have the Digipreneur podcast, and the Digipreneur podcast allows me to deep dive into all the topics that we cover. Every episode is about 45 minutes to 1 hour, and this is the platform of choice for me where I can deep dive, because guess what? When you listen to the podcast, what are you doing? You're cooking, you're doing chores, you're working out, you're at work, killing time. You're doing things, but you're also taking in the podcast, right? So this allows you to still take me in whilst passively consuming and doing other things as well, right? So there's the podcast, and this, again, I already showed you guys, where everybody in the world is tuning from, and that was just this month, right? Where everybody is tuning in from for this month. Then with podcast also has the Apple Podcast charts that rank the podcasts in all the different countries and all the different categories, So at this point, we're ranking in Trinidad, Jamaica, Barbados, Bahamas, Dominica, Grenada, St. Vincent, we're ranking in a couple of countries. All right. So that's also good. Like if you're trying to get sponsorship and things like that for the podcast, you have tangible proof that your podcast is doing well, right? And that could affect, how much money you make, right? So then we also have the YouTube. Now we're talking about my free content and the platforms that I use and how I use them. Then we have my YouTube channel. So my focus with YouTube is I treat YouTube as a repository for all of my video content. And I try to make sure that everything is topical. That way when people are conducting their searches on the search engines, and Google's the second largest search engine in the world. So whether they're searching on Google, whether they're searching on YouTube, I want to ensure that I have content there that people can consume in video format, right? So I also load up all of my speaking engagements, my vlogs, whatever I do in video format, I put onto YouTube. So again, people who want to see me in action, whether it be through what I do as a digital strategist, what I do as a teacher, the content from, the morning brew, whatever I do, all of my media features, I put onto YouTube. So everything is there. Like I said, it's a repository for my brand. The video content shows up when people need to search for things that I teach on. But then if they're booking me for other things, you have that platform where you guys can see me in action, right? Then we're on TV every single Tuesday on CNC3's Morning Brew. So I have a 15-minute segment on our biggest morning show in Trinidad and Tobago. And again, it's live streamed as well, so people can tune in. People tune in from all over the world. And they tune in from the website. After they've watched it live, they send me over the video content, which we then distribute across social media, all right? And all of that adds for credibility as well. Then we have the radio show, The Digital World. So it's a 3-hour program from 12 to 3 every single Friday on Freedom 106.5, and that's my show where we get to interact with the listeners. You know, the podcast is really predominantly a solo podcast where I get to teach and dive in deep. But with the radio program, we get to talk about a wide variety of topics. We also get to interview guests every single week on the digital world. So that's one of the reasons why you don't really hear many people on the Digipreneur FM podcast, because it's predominantly going to be a solo show. And when I got to do interviews, or when I want to interview somebody, I would bring them over onto the Digital World platform. So we get maximum reach. We get reach from the radio side of things, people tuning in live on radio. Then they could watch the live stream, and then we get the audio, and it becomes a podcast episode afterwards. And then if it's really, really good, I would also repurpose and reshare that episode onto the Digipreneur FM podcast. So again, the game of traffic. That one thing that we do on Digital World gets distributed across multiple channels for maximum reach, right? And it's blending both traditional and digital media. All right. Same thing with CNC3's TV segment, blending both digital and traditional. Same thing with the newspaper columns, blends traditional and digital media all together. And then we have social media, and that's where the place I build community. I have two-way conversations. I get to show you guys the day-to-day of what is happening, what I'm going through, yada, 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 right? And I also take a lot of, segments and clips out of the long-form content that we do and put them over on social media to drive traffic back to the long-form content as well, right? So that's what I do on the free side of things. So you get all this content, information, strategies, and stuff like that at no cost. It helps to build my name, position me as a thought leader within my industry. And the more eyeballs that we get over there, they fuel the pipeline of people who want to do business with me on a variety of fronts. That's how they typically hear about me, and they decide to work with me from any one of those platforms, right? Now, moving on to the second pillar inside of the brand ecosystem, which is the services and products, right? So the free content is that's pillar one. That's what people are going to learn about me, my expertise, how I can help them and give them a non-committal taste, so they don't have to pay anything to consume any of that. And again, they can qualify and self-disqualify themselves from the content, right? Now we move into services and products, and this is how I make money, all right? So all those people consume the free content. Now it's time to make money. So how do I make money? I make money at present through a few different areas. So the first thing is one-on-ones. Now I don't do this often, but I'll talk about that. One-on-ones. We also have the Digipreneur Academy that has online courses. We do company trainings. Again, I'm a program advisor at the University of South Florida. I am I'm a workshop facilitator at UE Lockjack. Brain fart for a second. Yeah, so I'm a workshop facilitator at UE Lockjack. And then I also provide the strategy sessions, right? And that kind of goes into one-on-ones and company training and stuff like that. So one-on-one strategies, right? Hear me out. So one-on-ones are typically going to be my most expensive offering, as it requires my time and it requires my presence to be able to deliver on that. because of that, it is the product that I hardly offer, and it's my most expensive offering because, again, it's my time, right? And I reserve this for people with missions that I truly believe in. That way I get excited about working with the people. So that's one of the things that I'm going to start to, I'm going to be communicating very soon, right? The people that I work with, because I get asked to do one-on-ones every single day. And I say no 90% of the time. And I say no so that I can work with the people I really want to work with on a one-on-one basis. And it's typically people who have a mission-based business, or, just somebody who is doing extremely well within their space. And it doesn't have to be financially, right? But you're doing well where you're on a mission and you're trying to make an impact. And those are the people that I get excited about working with. Like, if you're just somebody who is buying and selling products that you don't care about, I am definitely saying no, right? Because there's no interest for me to work with you, when for you it's really just, again, it's just a buy and sell business, So I really reserve who I do one-on-ones with, because one-on-ones it drains a lot of energy. It drains a lot of energy. And the wrong person, I remember 2020, pandemic hits, and everybody's trying to scramble and figure things out. And I was getting 1 million calls a day. And I said yes to a lot of people, because even myself, I was in transition. I didn't know what I was going to be. I had to figure out for myself, well, how is my business going to transition for COVID? And so I was doing one-on-ones, and I was booked like 10 plus hours a day doing one-on-ones. And by the time, at the end of the day, I was so drained, I just never wanted to speak to people. And then after, I think the first week, I started to tweak things on my end to cut down on the requests and cut down on who I even allowed to book a session. Because I would just have I had it set up so that you could have just gone to my scheduler, book your session, paid, and I would just show up whenever my calendar told me to show up, right? And I hated it. So I had to change that very quickly. So now I rarely do one-on-ones, but when I do, it's reserved for the people that have some form of a mission that I believe in. You've made me believe that this mission is worthwhile, and I definitely get excited about getting involved, right? But the good news is that when I do say yes, I'm more in tune with what you are doing, because I myself am excited to see it get off the ground, right? Then we have the Digipreneur Academy, which is my online school, which has allowed me to package my knowledge and turn it into courses that people can take at their own leisure, right? You get my knowledge, you get my insights, my how-tos, and I can scale that because it's digital. So people buy it once, they have lifetime access, and they can go and take their time and learn those skills, right? And people from anywhere in the world are able to take the courses, so that's always good as well, right? The other thing is, I get booked for company training. So companies today are still trying to figure out how they can leverage a digital world to build their brands online, to build new business, build awareness, and establish themselves as industry leaders and be top of mind. So company trainings with their marketing teams is something huge that I love to do as well. And anytime I get to be in a position where, like I said, I rarely do one-on-ones because I prefer to do one-to-many. I prefer to do workshops. That's my favorite thing to do. Like, I prefer to lay out a topic and do a workshop to bring you from A to Z on that particular topic. I love doing workshops, right? So company trainings, workshops, those are my favorites. You get to work with many people at one time. And then obviously you're going to generate more income that way as well. So, scaling one-on-ones, the only way to scale a one-on-one session, right? And this is the other reason why I don't like to do one-on-ones. To scale a one-on-one, you have to provide a level of value that's worth the dollar sign you're charging. So anybody could say, yo, it's going to cost you $1,000 US, $2,000 US, $10,000 US to sit down with me, right? But your brand has to be there at that point where people think it's worth it, and the value that people are getting has to be worth $10,000, right? People are investing in the transformation that you are going to be offering them. So, and then on top of that, right? Then we're in the Caribbean, where a lot of people don't have access to debit and credit or debt like they do in a lot of these first world countries. So companies in the States, in the UK, and Canada, they can afford to pay $1,000 US for a session with you, or sit down with you, or whatever, because they have credit cards, they have lines of credit, they have ways to pay for these things. The credit card penetration rate in Trinidad is 10%. 90% of the country doesn't have a credit card and can't pay you with debt, can't pay you with a credit, right? So, again, your value could be worth the $10,000. But then if you don't have an audience to pay you for that, then, trouble as well. So my strategy sessions right now are $300 US a session, right? And I just reserve that. I reserve it for the people that I really believe in their mission. But when we do workshops, if it's with a company, great. If it's, in partnership, like if it's a public workshop and it's in partnership with other companies, a lot of the times the workshops are free to the public, and the company will take on the expense, and they'll pay me, and I'll get what I want from there. But then I could work with, the 30, 40 entrepreneurs in the room diving in deep on a particular topic. So everybody wins in those scenarios, right? Moving on, I am with the University of South Florida and UWI Lockjack. So working with these two universities allows me to be a part of educating the next generation of digital marketers. Tongue twist. It allows me to work with the next generation of digital marketers, and also allows me to work with training the marketing personnel at companies, right? So, and then the other thing with the University of South Florida, as a program advisor, I get to influence the curriculum for digital marketing at the University of South Florida. So, there's about 15 program advisors around the world. There's about 15 program advisors around the world for the marketing program for USF. And we meet up, and we discuss the curriculum. We discuss marketing, trends, what's happening, things to tweak the course, all that good stuff, right? So I really enjoy that. And then with UWI Lockjack, well, we do workshops that's inside of UWI Lockjack. So again, love that as well, right? So that's what I do. That's how generally how I make money. Those are the services and products. And again, the free content builds a pipeline. People get to see me in all of these various different spaces. And it fuels those products and services, right? But then we get into pillar number 3, which is my event. So this is the other way that I make money as well, right? Through events. So the events that I do right now are speaking events. I host business events, and I do workshops. I was supposed to dive into workshops as a part of the events, right? I jumped the gun. But anyways, so for the events pillar, all of the free content I put out there, like I said, catches organizations' eyes, and it allows me now to get paid speaking opportunities. So when you have an organization or an event organizer that is reading the articles, they're watching the YouTube videos or listening to the podcasts, you name it, they're consuming the content, right? They'll reach out and be like, hey, just listened to episode number whatever. Can you do a talk on that at our upcoming event? We think this will be a great addition for our event, right? So they'll watch the content and they know what they're trying to do at their event, and they'll be like, hey, can you do this on stage for us? And that is how I predominantly get a lot of the paid speaking gigs that I do. It's event organizers being in tune with the content and then saying, hey, we would love you to come and speak on our stage. And then when I execute the speaking gig, you always want to put your best foot forward and do something great, because by the time the event is over, you also have other people who are having events that are in the crowd as well. And then they will come up to you and be like, hey, can I get your contact? We have an upcoming event and we want you to do this exact same talk or something similar. We want you to do that at our event coming up. And you'll get what's called stage side leads, where you're getting leads to speak at other events right at the event that you just finished speaking at, right? So paid, I shouldn't just say paid, but speaking opportunities can generate further speaking opportunities, right? Then we have hosting. So hosting is really new for me. I have been asked to host events for years now, and I've always said no. It was just never my thing. And then I remember 2022 working with Dr. Terry Carroll Reed out of Jamaica and watching her and Alex Sterling work and prepare. Now, I had seen, because at this point, 2022, I met Terry back in 2020. And when I would see how she prepared for events, I was like, wow, this girl does a lot of preparation for events. But I would only, because I was during the pandemic, again, it was all virtual, right? So I had an idea as to the level of work she did. But then when I got to work with her and see her in person, see the work in person, I was like, yeah, I'm good. Like if this is what the best hosts in the region is doing, I'm not willing to do all of that for hosting, right? Just call her. All right. So I turned down hosting gigs for years, which is never my thing. But then one event in particular, they pitched their event to me. And what they pitched, a light bulb came on. And basically they pitched and they said, yo, listen. And I'm paraphrasing, but they're like, listen, we want you to host the event because you're in the business and tech space. You have a personality that's very engaging. You're knowledgeable about the topics. And even when you're not the expert at the topics, you are smart and witty enough to ask the right questions and still add value to the overall event, right? And this is one of the things that event organizers are looking at when they're picking a host. They want people who are going to add value to the event. Now, in the case of Trinidad and Tobago, a lot of the times they're trying to put comedians as hosts because they feel the value is they can make the crowd laugh and they're personable, so that, you know, if in case technical difficulties or, you know, they're taking a little bit longer to get somebody to the stage, that person could improv and kind of crack jokes and keep the mood light, you know, so people don't realize, oh, wow, there's something is happening where they need a little bit more time, right? But when they pitch to me and they're like, yo, you're knowledgeable, you're smart, you're witty enough where you can ask the right questions, you can add a lot of value, you know, and they went into a whole bunch of things. By the time I read the email, I was like, wow. I was like, well, if this is what they see, this is perfect, and I'm really doing my job. But now I could see why hosting would make sense for me to do, right? And after that event, I started to say yes to more hosting events. I'm very particular. It has to be within the business and tech space, because I don't care to host. I don't care to host events, right? I don't care to host events that, again, I have no interest in. But if the event is something that has caught my interest, then it's going to make me want to do my homework. It's going to make me listen even more to the speakers and presenters and panel discussions that are happening on stage. and it's going to make me want to add more to the event. And I can add more because I'm more invested, right? So hosting is another part of the services that I offer now as well. It's just very specific events that I will say yes to. So, don't expect to see me hosting everything, right? And even if you're an event organizer, it just needs to align with my mission and what I'm about and my interests. That way, when I say yes, believe you me, I'm there. I'm ready to add value to the event, right? And then when we're talking events, and this being a part of the brand ecosystem, workshops is a big part of it. So like I said, the free content gives people the what and the why of the topics. My workshops are designed to show you how. So my free content gives you the what it is, why it's important, why pay attention. The workshops are geared towards showing you the how things are done, right? And again, event organizers or companies or whomever will look at the content and be like, hey, can you do a workshop for us on this particular topic, right? So I can get a call from an event organizer or a company and say, hey, we just listened to the Brand Ecosystem podcast. Can you come in and work with us on building our own ecosystem? And that's how that works. All right. So they've listened to the free content. They're intrigued. They are now a believer. And then they reach out and they'll be like, hey, we want to build our own brand ecosystem, or an entrepreneur or somebody will reach out and be like, I want to build a brand ecosystem as well. I just listened to the episode or I read the article and it makes so much sense. Can you help me craft a brand ecosystem for me? And then that's how I would get booked to do one-on-ones. That's how I would get booked to do a paid speaking event. So that's how I would get booked to do the workshop. So the free content would be the what and the why, right? So you now know what a brand ecosystem is. You now know why it's important. And then if I got booked to do a paid speaking, the paid speaking would be, similar to this, but more visual, more engaging, right? It'd give you a bit more. Right? And mainly because you have a live audience. Now you can kind of feed off of them. You can ask questions. You can make it more interactive. So it's going to feel different. It's going to sound very different. But then if a company reached out and they said, we want a workshop on brand ecosystem, then we're in a classroom and we are now going into the nuts and bolts of everything you got to do to build this out. And again, if you realize, if you've been keeping track, you realize there's a lot that has to go into this, right? You're not just waking up and getting paid speaking gigs or workshops at universities and stuff like that. Even for the free content, right? In the free content, we discuss blogs, podcasts, YouTube channels, social media, writing for media houses, hosting and producing a radio show, and then getting on TV on our largest network on our number one most watched morning show. You're not just going to get a segment on that, right? So there's a lot of work that has to go into these things for you to be able to build this brand ecosystem, even though it's on the free content side, right? So just stepping back a bit, you realize the three pillars: free content, you have service and products, and then you have the events that you do. They all flow into each other. Right? You could have listened to a podcast, then you book me to come and speak about this topic on a stage. I get booked, I speak on stage, then you have people that are like, hey, this is what I want to do. I want to book you one-on-one. Now we got one-on-one paid client. Or an organization can come and say, hey, we want you to come and do this same talk at our upcoming event. Or, hey, we want to bring you in internally because we want you to help us work on a brand ecosystem for our organization as well. Everything fuels into each other. Every single thing fuels into each other. They feed into each other. They feed off of each other. It's all a nice, harmonious experience, this brand ecosystem that we are building. So I wanted to give you guys my brand ecosystem so you guys can see how it works in real world, and you guys can kind of look at all of my pieces and say, oh, damn, okay, this makes sense. So now you guys can start to figure out what you would want your brand ecosystem to look like. You need to have content, right? And then you need to have your paid offerings, your paid products, your paid services, and then you need to figure out live events, because if you can figure out live events and get yourself in front of a real crowd, it's just going to unlock even more opportunities for exposure, but also to generate money as well. I will link the written article of the brand ecosystem. I will link that in the show notes as well. So if you guys do not want to listen back to a whole 55-minute episode, you guys can go and read the article just to see all of it written down, and you guys can kind of, make decisions from there. But I hope you enjoyed today's episode. That's it from me. That's the brand ecosystem episode. I hope you guys enjoyed it. If you guys really enjoyed it, please don't forget to rate the podcast. If you're listening in on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, wherever, make sure you rate the podcast. If it's a case of YouTube, like the podcast, right? And if you really enjoyed the episode, don't forget to leave the comments. The comments help to continue to grow the Digipreneur family all across the world. Go and, drop your reviews. I read all the reviews, and that helps me with what type of content you guys want me to produce for you guys and gals, right? So drop the reviews, and then people who are deciding whether or not to listen to the podcast, they'll go to the reviews first. So we want more people coming in. So do me a solid, drop a review if you enjoy the podcast, all right? Don't forget, you can learn more about building your digital presence and monetizing your platforms at KaronRose.com. That link to that website is in my show notes. And you can stay up to date on the podcast at digipreneur.fm. That's our website handle. Link to that as well in the show notes. And last but not least, you can follow me over on any social media platform of your choice, KeronRosc, across all social media channels. Looking forward to engaging with you, having discourse, and I really hope you guys enjoyed this episode. I really believe that every single person should be building a brand ecosystem, whether you are an individual or whether you are a corporate entity. There's just so many positives to building that, and the only negative is that it's work. The only negative is that it's work, and you need to have the right mindset, the right people to get this thing working. I do all of my stuff on my own as a solopreneur, so it can be done, right? But yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed this episode. I will see y'all next week. Well, actually, it's Sunday. I'll probably drop another episode. Maybe Monday or Tuesday. Who knows? I'll see you guys in the next episode, all right? Have a good one and take care.
You've been listening to the Digiboss, Karon Rose. We hope your notepad was filled after this episode. Make sure to like, rate, and review the show. The learning doesn't stop, folks. And to make sure you don't miss any gems from the Digiboss, go over and follow him on all social media platforms at Karon Rose. Folks, don't just sit there with a notepad. We need you to implement at least one thing into your business before the next episode. That's the only way your business levels up. Thanks for listening to Digipreneur FM. Now go be great.